The winter night pressed down like a heavy, silent blanket. Snow fell thick and fast, blanketing the deserted road in cold white. Each flake seemed to cling to the darkness, muffling sound, making the world feel as though it had been swallowed, whole by the storm. Ethan, a retired doctor, stood at the dimly lit gas station, the hum of the pump the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. He tugged his coat tighter around his shoulders, burying his hands deep in his pockets, trying to shield them from the biting chill. The wind cut through the skeletal trees lining the roadside, carrying an unnatural stillness that made him shiver, not just from the cold, but from a quiet unease he couldn't shake. He glanced around. The station was eerily empty. The faint, yellow glow of its overhead lights barely piercing the blanket of snow on the ground. In the silence, he could hear his own breath fogging in the icy air. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. A dog, standing just a few steps away, thick fur damp from melting snow. But it wasn't the wet coat that drew Ethan's attention. It was the eyes. Large, dark, pleading eyes that held no fear, no desperation, only a quiet, urgent call for help. The dog didn't move as Ethan stepped closer. It simply stood, unwavering, as if trying to speak without words. Ethan hesitated, extending a hand slowly. The dog's head tilted slightly, then it turned and moved away, disappearing into a snow-covered path that led off the roadside. For a long moment, Ethan froze, feeling a tug at his chest he couldn't explain, a pull, a quiet insistence that he was meant to follow. When he didn't move, the dog paused, turned, and pressed its nose lightly against his leg, nudging him forward. A deep instinct stirred inside him, something older than reason. He couldn't ignore it. Taking a steadying breath, Ethan tightened his coat and followed the faint tracks into the endless, cold night. His boots sank into the thick snow with each step, his breath coming in quick puffs. The wind howled through the trees, yet he didn't slow. The dog pressed forward, moving, faster now, urgency in every stride. They moved through a narrow, snow-laden path, flanked by skeletal trees draped in ice, their branches rattling against each other like brittle bones in the wind. In the distance, a faint, warm glow flickered. A small house, its porch light trembling against the storm. Ethan's chest tightened. There was something wrong. Through the frost-covered window, he glimpsed a heavily pregnant woman clutching her belly. Her face was pale, contorted with pain, and her breathing was shallow, ragged, each exhale a struggle. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, glinting in the dim light. Beside her, a little girl no older than 5 sobbed uncontrollably, gripping her mother's dress as if it were the only lifeline left in the world. The dog let out a low, anxious whine, paws digging into the snow, ears pinned back, in distress. Then it turned to Ethan, eyes wide, pleading as if saying, "Hurry, she's running out of time." Without hesitation, Ethan sprinted to the door, banging his fists against it. There was no answer. The dog barked sharply, pressing its nose against the door and pushing, as though it understood what was needed. Ethan shoved it open, and the dog bolted inside, straight to the woman's side, nudging her gently with its nose, seeking to comfort, to wake, to do whatever it could to help. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Ethan knelt beside her, voice steady but urgent. Her lips moved, but no words came. Her breaths were shallow, ragged, fading with each passing second. "I'm a doctor. I can help," he said, checking her pulse carefully. The dog whimpered, nuzzling her arm, its large head pressing gently against her as if begging her to fight. The little girl clung tighter, watching in terror, her small body trembling. The dog immediately turned to her, licking her hands, pressing close, providing the only comfort she had in that frozen, frightening moment. Another violent contraction tore through the woman, her body tensing painfully. Ethan's eyes narrowed, calculating, heart racing. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. "Over an hour," she whispered, eyelids fluttering. "Where's your husband?" he pressed. "He's far. He won't make it back in time," she gasped. The color drained from Ethan's face. She needed a hospital, fast. He scanned the small kitchen desperately for a phone, but before he could reach it, the dog lunged, nudging a phone off the table with its nose as if directing him where to act. Ethan grabbed it, called an ambulance, and immediately returned to her side. He guided her through breathing, counting each inhale and exhale. The dog stayed firm, unmoving, eyes locked on her, silently telling Ethan, "I brought you here. Don't let her go." Minutes stretched, like hours. Outside, the storm battered the windows, snow whipping against the walls. Ethan pressed gently against her ribcage, guiding her shallow breaths, trying to coax life back into her faltering body. The dog stayed by her side, moving only slightly to comfort the little girl, pressing its thick fur against the child's, trembling arms, offering warmth and reassurance amidst chaos. The distant wail of the ambulance siren finally cut through the storm, but to Ethan it came too slowly. His hands were ice cold as he monitored her pulse, feeling it flicker like a candle in the wind. He kept talking, coaxing her, staying calm even as he felt fear gnaw at him. Then another contraction hit, sharp and unforgiving. Her body arched, in pain, breathing nearly ceasing. "No! Stay with me! You need to stay awake!" he cried, tapping her cheek lightly. The dog whimpered, stepped close to the little girl, pressing its nose against her tiny hand, silently promising that everything would be okay. The child gripped the fur, holding on as though her life depended on it, and in a way, it did. Ethan's fingers checked her pulse again, leaning in to listen to her faint breathing. Too weak, too shallow. He pressed gently on her ribs, guiding her lungs to expand. "Breathe with me. In, hold, out." A faint, shaky exhale emerged. She was still alive, but only just. The ambulance arrived in a flash of lights cutting through the swirling snow. The dog perked up, tail wagging anxiously, sensing the arrival of help. But it didn't leave the little girl. It remained pressed close, calm but alert, ensuring she didn't wander, keeping her anchored in the chaos. Paramedics burst in, faces tight with focus. "She's lost too much strength. Pulse is weak. We need to move her now." Ethan relayed her condition immediately. Carefully, they lifted her onto a stretcher. The little girl broke away, clutching her mother's hand, sobbing, "Mommy, don't leave me." The dog darted forward, standing between her and the paramedics, ensuring she stayed close. "She can't be left alone. She needs you with her," Ethan said firmly. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, Ethan held the woman's wrist, checking her pulse, talking to her through shallow breaths. The little girl curled against the dog, holding on tightly, finding comfort in its warmth. The storm outside raged on, snow lashing against the windows, but inside they fought against time, against despair, against the creeping cold that sought to take her life. Seconds stretched into unbearable eternity. Another contraction racked her body, breaths shallower than before. Ethan's voice trembled slightly, but he remained steady. "No, stay with us. We're almost there." The dog whimpered louder, pressing its nose into her arm, offering silent encouragement. And then, finally, a bright, glowing hospital sign pierced the stormy darkness. The ambulance skidded to a stop, tires spraying snow. Paramedics moved swiftly, lifting the woman with practiced care. Ethan remained close, hands on her wrist, ensuring life still pulsed faintly. The little girl tried to follow, but the dog stepped in front, nose pressed gently to her hand, whispering safety. "You have to trust them. Your mom is in good hands," Ethan said, kneeling beside her, voice calm yet firm. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she nodded, clutching the dog's fur as if it were her only anchor in the chaos. Paramedics pushed the gurney through the emergency room doors, and just like that, the doors slammed shut, cutting them off from view. Silence fell. The little girl lowered herself onto a waiting room chair, eyes fixed on the closed doors. The big dog curled beside her, head resting on her lap, a silent guardian. Ethan stood for a long moment, then quietly sat beside them, hand resting on the dog's head. "We've done everything we could. Now we wait." And so they waited, waiting for a miracle in the heart of the storm. Time moved painfully slow. Every second stretched endlessly. Ethan sat quietly in the waiting room, gaze locked on the emergency room doors. The little girl sat beside him, legs swinging absently, eyes never leaving where her mother had disappeared. The dog lay curled. At her feet, ears perked, body tense, eyes unwavering, every breath, every movement, every flinch of the mother inside met with silent, vigilant attention. Controlled, intense, they all sat there, wrapped in a heavy silence. Then suddenly, the door swung open. The doors remained closed for what felt like an eternity. Ethan stole a glance at the little girl. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. The dog sat stiffly beside her ears, erect tail frozen mid-motion. Even it seemed to understand the weight of Themament. Then at last the door creaked open. A doctor emerged, his face unreadable. At first he exhaled slowly, peeling off his gloves, his gaze flickering between Ethan, the child, and the dog for a split second. No one breathed. Then he smiled. "Your mother is safe." Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they weren't from fear, they were from happiness. She threw herself into Ethan's arms, clutching his jacket. Laughing through her tears, the dog barked loudly, its tail wagging frantically. It turned to Ethan, then to the doctor, as if it understood everything at that moment. A voice broke through the relief. Mia, a man, rushed into the hospital breathless, his clothes dusted with snow. He dropped to his knees, gathering the little girl in his arms. "Daddy," she sobbed, clinging tightly to him. Ethan knew immediately this was the husband who had been too far away to make it in time. His eyes landed on the dog, and something remarkable happened. The dog stepped forward, tail wagging lightly, its gaze fixed on him, but it didn't jump or bark. It stood still, waiting, and then the man broke down. He pulled the dog into his arms, holding it tightly. "Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner, but thank you. Thank you for saving them." The dog nuzzled into his chest, a quiet forgiveness passing between them. Ethan knowing he had just witnessed something extraordinary tonight. The miracle wasn't medicine, the miracle was a dog's unwavering love. After all the chaos and fear, the hospital finally grew quiet. Ethan leaned back against his chair, closing his eyes for just a moment. Beside him, the little girl sat snuggled against her father, her face still strewn with dried tears, but now glowing with relief. The dog lay curled at their feet, its tail gently swishing with every steady breath. This moment of happiness wouldn't have been possible without the dog, and everyone knew it. The hospital room door opened, and a nurse smiled. "The family can see her now." The man lifted his daughter into his arms, hurrying toward the room. The dog sprang up, immediately following them without hesitation. Inside, they found the woman laying on the hospital bed, looking pale but radiant. Beside her, two tiny newborns leapt peacefully, wrapped in warm blankets. The little girl hesitated. At first, then suddenly burst into tears when she saw her mother smiling. "Mommy." She threw herself onto the bed, hugging her tightly. The woman gently stroked her daughter's hair, then looked up at the dog. It stood silently by the bed, its eyes soft but filled with emotion. "Thank you, my friend." Her voice was weak but full of gratitude. Her husband sat down, placing a hand on the dog's back, stroking it gently. "He saved you. He saved all of you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The dog didn't need praise, didn't need rewards. Its only concern was that its family was safe. But its story wasn't going to end there. A story that spread. Ethan knew this was a story worth telling. He had witnessed many miracles in his years as a doctor, but never before had a miracle come on. 4 legs with a heart so full of devotion. The next day he shared the full story from the moment the dog found him in the snow to how it never left its family's side, fighting to bring them back to life. The story spread quickly throughout the hospital, from nurses to doctors to patients. One of the hospital staff had captured a video of the dog waiting outside the emergency room. It says, locked on the doors. The footage was posted online, and within hours, thousands of people had shared the story. The comments blooded in a dog's loyalty can save an entire family. Not all heroes wear capes. Please give him all the love and care he deserves. Ethan watched as the dog sat beside the hospital bed, its tail gently wagging, and he knew he had made the right choice. Following it that night, the man knelt down, pressing a kiss to the dog's head, whispering, "Thank you," or "Little hero." The dog looked up, tail wagging harder, as if it knew its mission was complete. And in the hearts of everyone here, it was no longer just a dog, it was family.